I'd like to begin with a show of hands. How many people remember hearing the word lectionary in the last few weeks? Okay, I'm going to give an update. Don't feel bad. You're in the majority if you didn't raise your hand. The lectionary is a list of readings. It's used in many churches all around the English-speaking world to give structure and completeness to the reading of the Bible. If you follow the lectionary, you will hear almost the entire Gospels over a 3-year period, and they break it up. Almost like one of those read the Bible in a year. It's like that for the whole church. And there are two cool things about the lectionary. One is there are tens of thousands of churches at least, individual congregations that follow the lectionary. So there's a lot of material out there. If you go online and look up the passage for the lectionary reading, there's all sorts of commentary and information and ideas on what to do. And that seemed pretty cool to our worship leaders. The other thing about the lectionary is that if you're a preacher and you come up to a passage from the Bible you'd rather not deal with, you have to use it anyway. Well, that was cool up until this week. Because I will tell you that when I looked back, working forward, and saw this passage about being humble and not exalting yourself and serving other people, and seeing where it fell in the calendar, I thought, Lord, really? And as I got closer to the day, I thought, well, maybe on Monday, I'll know what to say. And Tuesday came, and I was saying, really? But we have commentaries, right? There's all these resources. That's the exciting thing. And the commentaries basically all said the same thing. This is a really good chance, preacher, they said, to remind your people, especially the ones who've been around a long time, that they need to make room for other people. I'm like, Lord, really? Because there are two things that I didn't want to happen today. I did not want anyone to think that I was directing the sermon at them. That would be bad. Meaning as an individual. I did not want anyone to think, he's talking about me. The even worse thing, I didn't want anyone to think that I was talking to the person next to him and not them. So I was in a quandary. I wrote a sermon, and Kate and I usually read each other's sermons, and she said, and I tried so hard to be as nice as I could. And she read the sermon, and she said, I thought you were going to be nice to them. And I said, I tried. And she said, well, I'm preaching on something. I'm using a different Bible passage. And here's the thing. We made some rules, right? We're going to make some rules to bring some organization to the church and to the worship service. And one of those rules is, on Saturday night, Alan can't throw out the Bible passage and pick something else. So I'm stuck. There are no slides here because I was truly stuck. I had some, but as I'm looking at this now, I don't want to preach about that. Here I am. But I thought of something. I thought of a different sermon. Does anybody know the story of the 99 sheep and the one? Well, I know somebody does. I knew who was going to nod before I asked. The 99 sheep or the 100 sheep is this little parable where people are complaining to Jesus because he's talking to sinners. And Jesus says, you know, if you're a shepherd and you have 100 sheep in your flock and one of them wanders out, what's the shepherd going to do? He's going to drop everything, run away from the 99 sheep and go after that one. And he's going to get the one back. And when he gets the one sheep back, he's going to say, look, I found my sheep that was lost. Isn't that great? And the implication is, well, he doesn't even imply, he says, it's just that same way when someone gets off track and gets found, There's more joy and rejoicing than for someone who never got off track in the first place. Now, for those of us who never get off track, those of us who never sin, that's a bummer. Because we non-sinners are never going to be the focus of special attention. Ah, you figured it out. Yeah. Someone wise who lives in my house pointed out to me and to a church one time that we all take turns being the lost sheep. Because think about this, and this was in a, I had to look up the commentary on this because it was more helpful than the commentary on the passage I'm supposed to be preaching on. The passage about the sheep is not about sinners who don't know Jesus. They're about sinners who are actually in Jesus' flock already. It's not about years for centuries. The 99 and the 1 is about evangelism. We need to go out and find those sinners and focus on getting those sinners into the flock. But that's not what it says at all. Jesus says it's about people who were in the flock already and started to wander off. And we know that that's all of us. So this passage is about each and every one of us. When you look at this thing about being exalted or humbled, you see the same thing. We all sin from time to time. We all fail to be humble from time to time. We all mess up. And so this passage is not directed at some Christians who want to put themselves on a pedestal. It isn't directed at the elders or the long-term members. It isn't directed at the pastor. It's directed at everyone. Each of us has the struggle to be humble and to serve. We all have to ask ourselves, how am I able to serve others? I think one of the most interesting things about this passage, it says, the greatest among you will be the servant. In our minds, we reverse this and say the servant among you will be the greatest. Do you see the difference? I think we have a habit, I certainly have. I'm saying we, it might not work for you. But in my own thinking, I thought, I need to serve more and put aside what I want so that I can be a better Christian. I need to say, well, what I don't worry about, the more I can serve, the better Christian I am, right? And certainly that's something that's drilled in. It's hard for us, I gotta say, because we've spent so many centuries learning that service makes you great, that we don't get how strange this was, that the greatest person would be the servant. That was weird. Now, we've been listening to Jesus so long, even people who aren't Christians in our culture get the idea that the leader is supposed to serve others. What do we call it when you go into politics and you're doing it? Public service. Non-Christians can go into public service, but the reason we call it public service and not lordship is because of the influence that the Bible has had on our whole society, on the influence Jesus has had. That a leader is supposed to be a servant. Well, here's the thing that occurs to me. The greatest among us is supposed to be a servant. Well, is there really a greatest? If we all take turns being sinners every so often, if we all wander off from the path, then that means none of us gets to claim the title of greatest. None of us gets to say, I am the greatest, so I'm the one who's got to serve. No, we all have times where we need to be the least, where we're not so good Christians. Everybody has those moments. If you think I'm talking just to you and not to the person next to you, this is for everybody. We all have moments when we're not so good Christians. And in those moments where we are the least, it's okay to turn to someone who at that moment is greater than us and say, I need some help. I need to be served now. Being served isn't wrong. Asking to be served isn't wrong. What it is an admission of weakness. It's a challenge to our pride. It makes us humble. But I will tell you, in my own personal experience, that to be able to say out loud, I need some help, it changes everything. Once you say it, everything looks different. Once you step away from that pride and say, I just need some help. In theory, we should all be able to reach God through anything that speaks of God. But in truth, none of us are perfect, are we? We weren't made to be perfect. We were made different, and we all have flaws. And it's okay to say, I just can't do that. I need some help from my church, from the people who are stronger than me today. And it doesn't mean anything except today. That, I think, is the key. Especially in our church, where, we have titles and we have offices, but we focus so strongly on the idea that we all stand equal before God. We all are going to have to take turns helping each other and being helped. And the way forward for us, as we have all these conversations, is to have the freedom not to say, I want it this way, and I want you to do it my way, but to say, I just can't do it a different way. I just can't do it the same way. This is for everybody, remember? I just can't, and I need some help. And in my experience, I need some help from you is a far more powerful motivator than I want it this way. Because it forces everyone to ask the question they're supposed to, can you love the person who comes to you for help? Can you love this person as a brother, as a sister? Will you love this person as a brother or a sister? It's not about power. It's not about who's in charge. It's not about who gets their way. It's about who needs help today. And the answer is all of us. And it's also, and this is what I heard, so importantly, it's also about who wants to show love to the fellow people in their church. And that is all of us. That came through so clearly. So the challenge for today, and believe me, if you do this, it's not just going to stay in the church. It might make things different in the next few weeks, but if you stick with it, it's going to make things different forever. In those situations where you need something, where you just got to have it this way, to say, first of all, I need this way. And that's a weakness. If I were perfect, I would be able to set aside my own needs and let the other people have their way. And then two, to say to yourself and to other people, God already knows, I'm not perfect. I know that I would do this if I were, but I'm not perfect. And three, would you help me? Because I have a need. If we approach our lives in that way, remember they say it's better to give than to receive. There's some truth to that. It is deeply humbling to ask for help. It really is better to give than to receive. But sometimes we need to receive, and that's okay. So I ask each of you to reflect honestly on what you need to receive and what you have the capacity to give. As we continue our journey through it as a church, as we continue our journey through as individuals, ask ourselves that and ask each other that. And together we will come to the place that God is leading us. As not just a family, but as God's family. That's what I got. So let's stand together. And let's sing. Dear God, I'll let you do that.
This is a new song to an old tune. So